Okay. Hello.
Hello. Make you host.
All right.
I think I made Mackenzie host. I'll make you host as well.
Okay.
And just so we got the recording started now. And so I'm going to introduce, this is Becky Tuttle, and we are, I totally spaced on the name of the session.
Oh, you know what? Why don't I start sharing my screen now to give you a little hint.
I found it.
Okay.
Finding harmony in the work-life balancing act. There we go. Perfect. So I'm going to hand it over.
All right. Thank you so much. And for also being there for me throughout this whole process, Shannon. I appreciate being my mentor for this. And I am so excited to share this day with everybody here. I wish I could see all of your faces in person, but I'm really excited to either see your chosen icon or your face on the sidebar. So thank you so much for taking the time to come to the talk today. I had been thinking a lot about how special OWHE is to me. And I think I'm trying to remember how many conferences I've been to. I think at least 3. And there's just something about the conference that it just always feels like a recharge for me. And I couldn't imagine this year starting off without that very much needed recharge. So when I also was thinking about kind of what to talk about, I really thought, let's talk about kind of, recharging and how do we find that harmony? There have been so many things about this past year that have been like disharmonious or whatever, unharmonious. I don't know what word that would be, but I think that there is hope for this coming year. And through the exercise of preparing this talk, I have come across some really helpful pearls that I'm just going to kind of scatter these pearls out there. And I hope that even if there's just 1 or 2 that resonate with you, that maybe there will be something that you'll take away to help bring harmony into 2021. The talk today is about finding harmony in that work-life balance. And first, I'd like to tell you a little bit about what we're going to be doing during the talk. So if you have obviously you're in front of some sort of smart device. And if you're on your phone, this may be trickier to do. But if you are in front of your computer, then maybe open up your Safari or Outlook, or no, not Outlook, what would it be, Chrome, whatever your browser of choice is. And here, I will paste in the chat, or yeah, that link hopefully should work. And that's going to be our polling activity. We have 5 polls, and then it can be a bit interactive. And then we will have a couple small free writes that if you have a piece of paper handy or a Word document open to jot down some notes, that would be excellent. And then finally, at the end of the session, we'll be having a breakout. I know that can be, sometimes it feels like you're on the spot a little bit, but it is, I think, the best way to have that sense of community. And so I hope that you'll stick around and participate in our small group breakouts to kind of bring it home at the end of the talk. All right, so those are that's the nuts and bolts. And now, who am I? In addition to being an OWHE fanatic, I am an educator, and I teach at Oregon Health and Science University in the Department of Emergency Medicine. I teach residents. I also do some volunteering down at the School of Medicine. And then I, for the last 5 years now, have been teaching anatomy and physiology at Newnham, so the National University of Naturopathic Medicine, for their undergraduate program. And boy, oh boy, was that transition from an in-person anatomy lab to the digital only environment quite the transition. And I felt like I had a brand new job this year because I had to completely recreate 2 courses to get that online. So that's who I am. But I am also a physician. So I'm an ER doctor. And this is a silly picture of when I went to go intubate somebody, so put in a breathing tube. And in the era of COVID, never has there been more stress. The other thing that you should know during this picture is that I was like 20 something weeks pregnant. And so I was very worried about what contracting COVID would mean for me and my unborn child. Spoiler alert, the daughter has been born. She is gorgeous and beautiful and healthy. It's all very exciting. And I managed to make it through however many 9+ months of doctoring without getting COVID. So that was knock on some wood and send up some prayers, a very fortunate situation. And now I'm very excited that vaccines are rolling out for hopefully getting away from this distancing that we have to endure for a little bit longer. Anyway, so I'm also a wife and a mother, and those are just a few of my labels. And I think that when we talk about our work-life balance, it's important to first like recognize that we wear and carry all of these labels. And so now I turn to you and I ask, who are you? And this also gives me a chance to know who you are so that it can kind of put it into context, and we can start that sense of community by seeing where we overlap and where we don't. And the way we'll do that is through this word cloud, and we'll be able to see if everybody puts educator, it'll be like the biggest word on the screen, or mentor, advisor, or whatever. So we'll take a minute to watch the magic happen here. Oh yes, and the link is in the chat. See if it works. This is also something that I love about OWHE, and like the opening session, all the infographics that also talk about who we are and where we're from.
Is it showing on your side? Because I'm not seeing the cloud.
Oh no, you're not seeing it?
No.
Oh boy.
You want to narrate it for us?
Yeah, I would love to. Oh, this is so tricky. I wonder if I need to be sharing poll everywhere. Let me see.
Oh,
well,
probably.
So it is, we've got a big advisor, and then mom is kind of second, followed by wife and daughter and educator. And so now let me see if I go here. Oh yeah, that's weird that it's not. Now, let's see. Oh yeah, poll is, so I am a cheapskate, and I'm so sorry if you couldn't submit. I only have a limited version. Let's see.
Or like you're an educator and, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I know, I have participated in groups that have, oh, this is such a bummer. Well, I think we did a little trial run, and I think it worked for a moment, but perhaps we'll try this. Let's see if that, I think it may not be working. Well, there, can people see that or not? No? Let's see.
I think with the narrating, you get the information, and we get the feel, we get to participate.
Okay, all right. Well, the other thing I can do here although I had said I probably wouldn't. Yeah, technology boo. Exactly. Thank you for your understanding. And I will just here, stop that share for just a moment because I want you to see your beautiful words. And then we'll move on with grace. There, you can kind of see it now. And a crop of my shoulders. Okay. All right. Well, then the next question is, what do you balance? And so this, our label sometimes, I mean, you can see here on our previous slide how we have a writer and runner working. So I see there's some mention of faith, and those are all things that we have to balance as well. But you may think a little bit more about things that aren't necessarily your label that have to fit into your schedule. So that may be something like I need to balance my health and exercise, or chores around the house. Like I wouldn't label myself as a chore doer, but it is something that I need to balance. So we'll take a moment here and I will narrate what I see here. So I see work, parenting, helping with child online school, self-care, family, work, sleep, emotions, parenting, managing the household, helping aging parents, dealing with online school, being a family liaison, cheerleading, underpaid. That finances is definitely a big deal. Oh my gosh, for small businesses and gyms. Oh, I don't know how they're getting by. Restaurants, depression, anxiety, too many things. It sounds like a lot of people are in the right place then for this talk. Exhaustion, supporting others, health, friendships. I'm seeing a lot of great things that we have to balance, for better or for worse, really. I think that it looks like a lot of people can relate because some of these topics are coming up again and again. So how do we balance that? How do we, I in the emergency department, everybody talks about how we're like constantly juggling all these balls, and the concept of multitasking is like this farce, right? That you can't multitask, you can only task switch, and you can really only do one thing at a time. And so then how do we do this juggling act? How do we balance our work and our life? Because when you're at work, you can't be at home. Well, maybe now we all can, I guess, but can you really be, I mean, throughout this week and throughout talks, I've heard like really poignant and tragic stories about actually, I think that this wasn't in an OWHE talk, but recently I was talking to a mom who said that her daughter was doing like her remote class in another room, and she like, I don't think this was an OWHE, it might have been an OWHE talk. I'm sorry if I'm parroting somebody's words, but basically like the daughter needed to communicate with the mom, but the mom was like in the work zone, and the daughter's like sending little notes over the banister of the like downstairs to the mom being like, I'm hungry, can someone bring me food, and like sending these messages, but mom was in work zone and in front of the computer, and so it's just like this really sad thing where even though you are at home, you can't really be at home. And so throughout this kind of exercise in turning to the experts and seeing, okay, how do they do it? I've kind of distilled it down to a couple themes. And so the first is to prioritize and organize. And then the second is to unload and reload. And we'll talk about what that means. So the first thing is to prioritize. And we've already kind of talked about what is on our priority list through some of the things that you mentioned for your to-do list, right? So you've already kind of started generating that list of priorities. And The next thing, though, to talk about when we prioritize these items is that there's an ideal list of what our priority list would look like, and then the actual list of like how our time management actually is spent. And so we're going to do another poll, which I will narrate. But hopefully you can do it on your phone. And can you at least see the questions if you're not in the poll? Okay, good. I'm seeing some nods. So this is just a random list that kind of from a couple of different places. It seems to sort of have some recurring themes of work being on a list of priorities. I put play, but this could be like your hobbies or travel, which travel probably not many people are doing right now. And then health, which could include exercise or, whatever that may also be your, if you're on a diet or something like that. And then your personal connection. So if you have a partner or if you have dependents, and dependents, I can tell you that I had a cat dependent for many years before I ever had any children. And that cat was certainly high up in my list of priorities. And our home care, so chores, whether it's laundry or cooking or cleaning, that is certainly something that has to get done, but where does it go on your priority list? So this is an ideal scenario. And what I'm seeing on my end here is that partner is at the top, followed by self-care. And actually self-care just nudged it out for the lead. And then dependence, followed by health, and then work, and then play is down second to the bottom, followed by chores and home at the very end. So there's a little bit of kind of in the middle moving around, but self-care and wellness and partner and dependence. So all the people that are closest to you seem to be at the top, and then all of the like tasks seem to be down at the bottom. So that's in the ideal. Now, let's take a moment to talk about what your actual priorities end up being in terms of how you spend your time. Do you really, I personally feel like I spent all, with all this like nursing that I'm doing, I feel like I am sanitizing things all the time. Like I've got rashes on my hands. I am lotioning my hands all the time. I think that's a verb, right? Lotioning. And so I feel like a lot of my time is spent cleaning things, and certainly not traveling. So I see that work is kind of up at the top right now, followed by chores. So what went from the bottom of the pile is now second on the totem pole, followed by dependence and partner. Self-care and wellness is in the bottom half for sure, and then health all the way second from the bottom, and then play is very last. So, and this is like a kind of Instagrammy picture of, one mom's take on this is what ideally I would look like and what I would be when I'm in the mirror every day. And then the actual reality of I can't even put on my shirt. And I am, some of these words we've already said, or, you've already said in the chat about anxiety and depression, that really the pandemic has, I think we can blame it on that, a lot of it, but that guilt that can come, and really I think that like the guilt feeling is one of the big, yeah, I like that comment about work. Can I put work 3 times? Yeah, work really is. I also feel like work is so much harder at home when there's so many like, oh, but then I could do my chores instead of doing my work, or I don't know, I'm like I'm staring at holiday decorations that finally just yesterday I was able to put some of them away, and my husband is just thinks it's ridiculous that the holidays have been lasting for over 2 months in our house, but anyway, my 3-year-old was very excited about that, but it's true that this what actually ends up happening is totally different than what we imagine. And sometimes there's guilt associated with that. And so I feel like we should first acknowledge that, like acknowledging the guilt that can come with our ideal priorities not matching up with how we actually spend our time. We first need to acknowledge that that exists, and then like be forgiving and kind to ourselves about it. And so let's talk about some strategies for how we do that. And I turn to my girl Michelle Obama here. So you know, we're always becoming, right? And the one thing that we can do is do a better job of putting ourselves higher on our own to-do list. And I think that that's so much easier said than done. So while her words are wise, how do we do that? And I have now kind of gone, as we transition between understanding what our priorities are or should be, how do we really organize them? And organize is a way to say, move that actual toward the ideal. And so the two words that I use to, when now that you have that list in front of you, are to audit it and edit it, okay? So the first thing with auditing is to kind of take hold of how you feel about the things on your list. And I love some Marie Kondo and I love Gretchen Rubin. And so I'm going to use both of their lingo here. You can choose if you want to say what sparks joy, or you can say what energizes you. There are lots of different ways to say, okay, what gives me butterflies when I think about getting to do this thing, whether it is tucking my daughter in at night, which actually now has become a bit more of a project. How many times can a 3-year-old really need to go to a potty before finally getting tucked in? The answer apparently is 5. 5 times is how many times my daughter needs to go to the bathroom before she actually gets tucked in. Anyway, so I like this little graphic of like the watering can. I do not have a green thumb, but the idea of what like nourishes you and helps you grow, what gives you water, what gives you light, what gives you strength. And so if you look at your list and kind of maybe put some mental stars by those things, and honestly, like it could be work could when I teach my anatomy and physiology class and students get excited, that is just like I feed on that excitement, right? Like I get so excited that I have told somebody something cool about the human body. And so it is like a highlight for me. Now when I look at the stack of papers to grade, that is maybe a dissatisfier, but you know, there's necessary evils that come with that. So audit your list. And this is where we're going to take a moment to do a free write. And we're going to take 3 minutes to, if you haven't written your list down, you've just done the polls, this is a time to kind of jot down in that Word document or on a piece of paper what fills you up. And then also, as you're auditing this list, what drains you? And this is going to be important when we go to the next step of editing. So think about, you know, like what's a plus, what's a minus, and then what you're like not sure about. And we'll start this timer, which hopefully it'll give you 30-second cues if I've done this correctly. But so far I'm 0 for 1 on my technology. Yes, technology, it does work. Thank you, Lori. All right. So for those things that are in the middle of your list that are not clear highlights or clear lowlights, sometimes it can be hard to figure out where to categorize those. And if there's something that's on your task list or part of your label that you're kind of lukewarm about, I'll give you an example. I am in charge of scheduling for when residents rotate through the emergency department. And on one hand, I feel like it is this service that I do for the residents that I feel like I put a lot of thought into it, and I feel like I do a good job that, you know, I would like to think that I do. But on the other hand, I hate doing it. Like, it's always this like cloud hanging over my head, and it just takes time, and it like I have to sit down and do it, and it's very hard to find time to just like sit down without distraction and do it. And so that's something that I kind of feel mixed emotions about. And one thing, and this is not a new concept, is to do the flip a coin test, right? So like if you were to flip a coin and say heads, this stays part of my life, tails, this is gone from my life. And then you see the result and that gut reaction of how you feel with the loss or maintenance of that thing, you know, is, I think, something that can be very telling in then as we move on to the next step, which is editing. And so when you edit your list, this is trying to find out what can we cut from our to-do list, what can we sort of eliminate to create that like white space in our schedule, or to allow wiggle room in that list of actual priorities toward the ideal priorities. And the first thing, obviously, is to say no, which I think also has been a bit of a theme throughout OWHE that I have seen in some of the, you know, kind of more wellness oriented talks about, you know, saying no to things, or maybe saying, let me think on it, and then, you know, giving your answer a day or two later or whatever, if you've thought about if you have the bandwidth to accommodate like a project or task or whatever. And so I think that as you look at the list and see what can go, and it's a little bit of a head scratcher, I know, when you're like, well, someone has to do the dishes and my 3-year-old is clearly not doing them, or if she were to do them, it would just be a bigger project, right? So there is some there is some pause for that. And I've come across a few different strategies that I'm going to try, and I would encourage you to think about trying as well. So the first is to think about it in terms of units of time. So if something comes your way and it can be dealt with in 1 minute, so an email is in your inbox, if you can respond to it in 1 minute, do it. Anything that can be done in 1 minute, do it and get it off of your list, and that will just provide so much more time and that white space, that clarity, that whatever, to focus on other tasks. And putting it on the back burner or tabling it just kind of festers and grows, and either becomes something that is like a burden that you're going to have to do later, or it will turn into that sense of guilt. And guilt is, again, that emotion that we're trying to move away from. So if it can be done in 1 minute, do it right away. Now, there are some projects, for example, taking down holiday decorations, that I just felt like, well, that's going to take like a whole day, and I don't have a whole day, so it's just never going to get done. And for those types of projects, that laundry is stacking higher and higher, or that PowerPoint that you have to do for that presentation, see if you can chunk it out. So schedule a 10-minute date with that project and just do it for 10 minutes. And I had a mentor once who said, you can do anything for 10 minutes. And this was her approach to fitness, right? She was like, it's raining. It's always raining in Portland or in Oregon. And who is ever going to be able to keep up with like a running regimen? And if you can do anything for 10 minutes, that's all you need to do. And so even if it's pouring rain and you're going to get wet as a dog, just put on your running shoes and a rain jacket and just get out there for 10 minutes. And it's the same thing with a task. So if there's an insurmountable task, chunk it out in 10 minutes. And if you don't want to do time, you can also set some mini SMART goals for yourself and have little attainable mini goals along the way to the bigger goal. That's another common theme for dividing up our tasks. But I kind of like the idea of chunking it out in terms of time. And then finally, another thing to do is to just write things on the schedule. And this is moving more toward also preserving that time for things that really matter. So that self-care that everybody wants in the top half of their list, so you need to schedule a date with yourself. And so if it's an hour where, you protect that time, I'm sure that everybody that had registered for the conferences isn't here had picked 3 p.m. on Thursdays as their hour of me time. And so I'm so glad that they don't need to be here for this talk because they have scheduled their me time. But I hope that, like you think about that as, sacred time. And if you would save that hour date with your partner, or, why wouldn't you also save that time for yourself? And how awful would it be if you had a meeting with somebody, or a date, or whatever it is, and they're sitting there at a cafe, which is obviously pre or post COVID, but not peri-COVID. They're just sitting there waiting for you. And let's say it's like a romantic blind date. They have the rose in their hand, and they're just waiting to see you walk through the door. And what a letdown that would be. And you need to think of yourself as that like suitor, suitress, whatever the verb or noun, I guess it's a noun, would be. I majored in English in college, and you would never even believe that, right? But you have to think of yourself as that person waiting for yourself, and don't let yourself down. So schedule that time and keep it sacred, okay? And those are just a few of the ways that you can kind of edit this list, start chipping away at it, to move toward the ideal, okay? And this is that moment. So now I'm gonna stop talking for a minute to allow you to look at that list and think, what can you just slash from your list? Is there anything that you can just slash from the list? And I'm also going to take this moment to say, what can you outsource or delegate? Is there something that you can offload from your plate? Maybe you say to, if you have a roommate or a significant other or a child who won't burn themselves by cooking, have that person be in charge of a meal for the week. And say, okay, you know what, Friday night is your night to help with dinner, and that's my bubble bath time, or whatever your wellness is that you schedule with yourself. By delegating tasks to others, or maybe you have somebody come to clean, and the time that you would spend vacuuming, you can spend doing something else. So we'll take a minute now to think, what can you cut? And what can also wait? What do you not need to do right now that you can instead dedicate to yourself or to something else higher on your priority list? And we'll take a minute. Okay, that was a really fast minute. You can continue to go back to the list and edit, but I want to add one other comment, and that is keeping this list handy and just like take a few weeks with it and see if you make any progress on moving the priorities around. And if there's something that's on your list, and this isn't necessarily on your like big list of priorities, but maybe it's on your to-do list, like your daily to-do list or whatever. And if it's on your list to do for the day and you don't do it and you push it off to the next day, then you don't do it the next day, you push off to the next day. Once it's 3 strikes, see if it can just get off your list. Maybe you don't actually need to do that. Maybe it's not a priority. And there are so many things that I want to do that I keep delaying, keep delaying, keep delaying, keep delaying. And at some point, you just have to say, you know what? What is going to happen if I just don't do that thing? And the other thing that my mom always likes to say, and it is, you know, you if something happens or doesn't happen, are you going to remember it in 5 years? Like if I have laundry on my to-do list this week, but there's a lot on my plate and I keep pushing off every day and I feel guilty about not doing laundry every day. If it's a week that went by without doing the laundry or whatever the task is, does it really matter? And the answer probably is no. And there are some things where it will matter, and that's important to be aware of. But just have give yourself some leeway, have some grace, and just allow for 3 strikes and you're out to be a part of your editing of your list. And I really like this bell hooks quote that living simply makes loving simple. And just think about if we simplify and create more of that white space, how much more space we have to be positive or have positivity surround us and love surround us. And moving away from 2020 and into 2021, maybe we can simplify. And really, if nothing else, the one silver lining I think of this pandemic is we have learned how much we can cut out by, you know, because we're not in person for a lot of different things, we've become flexible and adapt, and we've had to change. And we have seen that things can be done a different way. And so that's just something to think about. So this is my slide for what was last year, where we thought it was going to be this beautifully stacked thing, and then it just turned into this, you know, just lots of chaos. And I think that this moves into that discussion about guilt, and when things don't go the way that we had envisioned, whether it's guilt or whatever emotion that comes at us because it didn't work out the way that we wanted. And those negative feelings can build on the actual like disappointment or, you know, the failure of whatever it is. Maybe you don't have your priority list the way you would want it. And then not only is your priority list not the way you want it, but now you feel guilty about it. And so it compounds on itself. And Maya Angelou has this quote that you may encounter many defeats, but you must not be defeated. In fact, it may be necessary to encounter the defeats so that you can know who you are, what you can rise from, and how you can still come out of it. And I think that, you know, idea of perseverance is really important, that don't beat yourself up when things don't go the way that you'd like. Learn from it and move on, like forward motion, right? And that's where we come to unload and reload. So if there are things that are dissatisfiers that come your way, whether it is, let's say work is on your priority list and you have a negative sign by work because there's something that is causing it to be negative for you, whether it is some kind of discrimination, whether it is related to race or sexual orientation or ageism. I recently read this article about the Jennifers of the world, the Janes of the world, and the Janets of the world. And Jennifer is that young whippersnapper who like wants to be gung-ho and everybody doesn't think she has what it takes. And Jane is kind of this mid-career person who sort of blends into the background and nobody really takes her seriously or gives her those leadership roles. And then there's Janet, who is kind of the senior end of career person who also doesn't get picked for leadership because she's like cast as this one foot out the door. And so maybe you feel like you're being cast as one of these people within your work environment, and it's important to acknowledge that. And is that a source of negativity that is affecting your happiness at work? For me, I think that like as a mom, and I went through this with my first daughter, and now with my second, I worry about carving out time in my work schedule to pump, and feeling like there's this stigma from people around me that, it's like the new mom smoke break of, oh, I'm going to take my 15 minutes, like just slacking on the job to go out and do this thing. And I feel like I'm shirking responsibility when in fact I'm like, providing the only thing that my child can eat. And so I think that negativity, or those inner voices and inner thoughts, it's important to recognize them. And so if there's something that is either bias or discrimination, if there's just even your own inner critic that is causing this burden and weighing on you, it's important to acknowledge it and try to eliminate it. So that would be another edit away from your mental space. We talked about outsourcing tasks, and then scheduling time for yourself and setting those SMART goals. And this is how you can move toward harmony. Then so as we talk about that inner critic and that inner voice, this Roxane Gay quote I like. It says, "I love, but I am not entirely sure how to be loved, how to be seen and known for the utterly flawed woman that I am. It demands surrender. It demands acknowledging that I am not perfect, but perhaps I deserve affection anyway." And I think that that's another thing I really like about OWHE, that we are a community of individuals in education, and there is such diversity among us, but also a really powerful sense of unity. And I think there is imperfection in all of us, but also there's love in all of us, and we are all worthy. And so I kind of want to wrap toward the end of my talk before we get to the breakout session to just say, like, you are enough. And I kind of feel like there could just be a whole book written about the word enough. Like, what does it mean to be enough? And we talk about like this auditing and editing your lists, and really it's not how much can you be, it is what is enough. And if we just focus on enough, and not all, then it also becomes a little bit more forgiving and digestible and creates more of that white space. So just that first acknowledgement of that you are enough. Okay. And there's another quote that the most powerful words in the universe are the words that you say to yourself. And so now we're going to take a little moment to make a mantra, and this is something that it's like a homework assignment, where try saying this to yourself every day. And I had a yoga instructor who was really into the mantra, and she would have us create a mantra at the beginning of our practice every time. And I just felt so energized at the end of every session because I had been focusing on this one mantra. So it might be, I am strong, or I choose happiness, or I am worthy, I am ready, I surround myself with positivity, or I am enough, something like that. And so now we're going to take a minute, and this is if you already have a mantra. I would invite you to share it, and maybe it will be, or if you've heard of somebody else's mantra, you can, there's no plagiarism. You just share away what might be something that we can say to ourselves to empower ourselves. I am worthy. I am safe. I am ready. I choose to look at the positive. I am worthy to be here. I am strong. Punctuation, very important. There's an exclamation point at the end of that. I choose positivity, and I am healthy. We are energy that existed before this container this body. It will exist after this container is gone. It is enough. It was always enough. I am eternal. I am a good mom. Tell that to my daughter. I belong here. These are beautiful. We'll just pass the baton next year and somebody else can take over. And then this, one other just thing to remember through this talk is that self-love and self-care is not the same thing as selfish. And so that is another thing about eliminating the guilt feelings associated with self-love and self-care and scheduling time for yourself. And again, another example about being a mother. The first time I started taking my daughter to daycare, I felt so guilty if I was done with work or like had a break between meetings and I wasn't taking care of my daughter. And she was there with these, not strangers, but, effectively like not her mother. And I was, I had time to get a manicure or a pedicure if I wanted. And I felt guilty about that. And I think that is important to acknowledge, and then to turn around and remind ourselves, that self-care is not being selfish, and it can allow one to recharge so that they are a better partner, parent, worker. All of those labels you will be better at if you take the time for yourself. And now we are going to do a breakout. We have we'll take 10 minutes or so. Let's see, my original thought was about 4 per room. And I don't know if we'll go with that. And this is a time to share with your community about, kind of reflect on how you tackle your to-do list or your priorities. Do you have any secrets that you can share? Because obviously these are secrets, I guess, that I have come across through, reading self-help books or wellness things or whatever. And these are not novel ideas. And I'm sure that our group has this amazing collective wisdom that can continue on. So let's take a moment. And even if it also is just like unloading about guilt that you're carrying, or, feelings of expectations that have been too high, and like maybe we should lower that bar and have a little bit more grace for ourselves. So just kind of take this time to share on how you find that harmony and how you can balance life and work. And did I stall long enough to get the groups? Yep. Okay, good. All right. Well, I hope that that was an opportunity to have like a sense of community and hopefully share some collective wisdom of how we're getting through this. And I had a really great chat in my room that we were talking about, setting boundaries, and like when you're on the clock, you're on the clock, and when you're off, and you don't check your work email. Email was a big theme on how we handle our email. And I think that another good pearl that came from our group was, don't check your email if you don't have time to respond, like in that moment. And so with all these like devices that are, all the screens that are in front of us now, it's so easy to access. And if it's not work email, it could be even just like Facebook or Instagram or whatever. It's easy to access all this information. And it's good to just like distance from it if you don't want to go down that rabbit hole. And also praising yourself. So those to-do lists can be, a way of validating ourselves when we've done it, and you can check it off the list. And if it wasn't on your list, I am a big fan of writing it on the list so that you can just check it off. And so I think that is, those are just a few tips and tricks of how we can find harmony. And what is harmony, right? So this is that, how we find that sense of peace or agreement, that pleasing feeling. And so you can see in the chat, hopefully this is, where did it go? I feel like I lost my, I'm not sharing my, did I lose it? Oh. Okay, there. Okay, I was like, there's no Zoom, it's gone, but I found it. Yes, so I think that we can, we're over time, but if there was any other final words of wisdom that folks wanted to share, I also want to draw your attention to the chat where there's a link for the evaluation. And let's see, I'm going to go to my final screen here. That's what I want. And that's the final screen. And yeah, so thank you all for joining today.